Count Dooku is perhaps one of the most gifted tacticians and smartest military leaders from the era predating the Galactic Empire, combining his incredible dueling capabilities with his reputation and strategic mind to command one of the most powerful military forces of the prequel era, though he would come to be defeated and executed by Anakin Skywalker shortly before the eventual rise of the Empire that he fought so hard to create. The rise of Sidious and subsequent domination of the galaxy leaves us to wonder what role Dooku would have played in the newly formed Galactic Empire after its inception, and exactly how he planned on the formation of the Empire taking shape. Though it was ultimately always in Palpatine's plan to betray Dooku and have him killed in favor of a new, stronger apprentice in the form of the Chosen One, what did Dooku believe his role would be, and what were his aspirations for the new form of government that would build from the ground up? Well, stick with us today, weary travelers of the galaxy, and let's explore what Dooku envisioned for his version of the Empire and the rise of a new Sith Order. The most important aspect of Dooku to remember is that he didn't use the dark side for the raw power that it provided, and seldom did he succumb to his anger or his hatred. Instead, he viewed the Force and the dark side in particular as a political tool that allowed him to further his agenda. Due to this, he did not strictly adhere to the traditions and practices of the Sith, which is both one of his strengths as well as one of his most prominent shortcomings, as well as likely one of the premier reasons why Palpatine was able to blindside him with his ultimate betrayal at the end of the war so effectively. His view of how the war would end very closely resembled what actually happened leading up to the Battle of Coruscant and the abduction of the Chancellor, though he was led to believe that upon his duel with Anakin and Obi-Wan, he would kill Obi-Wan in order to tempt Anakin towards the dark side, in order to intentionally be defeated by the Chosen One. Instead of being executed, however, he believed that he would be captured by Anakin and brought back to the Senate for his trial, where he would sit out the rest of the war in relative peace, and ultimately feign ignorance when the Separatists' true plans were finally revealed to the public at large. He did not, however, account for the idea that Anakin would be close enough to the dark side that the Skywalker would actually be willing to execute an unarmed prisoner of war, nor did he anticipate Palpatine pushing him towards his final breaking point. After Dooku was captured, tried, and imprisoned, he would then allow Palpatine to pull enough political strings to paint Dooku as a fallen hero, and misled patriot who was deceived and tricked by the dubious Separatist forces, using none other than General Grievous as the premier scapegoat for the atrocities conducted by the Separatists over the war. Over time, Dooku would garner a level of goodwill, ultimately being reaccepted into the new Empire and being allowed to rise through the ranks, albeit at a steady pace with minimal immediacy. Interestingly enough, he was privy to the plan of turning Anakin to the dark side, though his interpretation of the events would be slightly skewed. He believed that the Empire would follow a format more closely akin to the reign of Darth Revan and Darth Malak, wherein the Sith Empire would still be ruled by two, but they would employ an armada of dark side Force sensitives to execute the legwork of the regime. This is where the idea for a Dark Jedi Council came into play, as Dooku believed he could work his way to becoming second in line only to the Emperor, and at his fingertips would be an army of Sith warriors akin to how Plagueis and Sidious utilized Darth Maul as the clandestine assassin, separate from the rule of two and the duo, and at the helm of this dark army would be General Skywalker. We know that Dooku did not strictly adhere to the rule of two, as one of his primary ambitions was to round up the Jedi survivors and create a new collective Sith Order, though rather than feeding off of their blind emotion, he would teach them how to use the dark side as a tool, and becoming a stronger order than the Jedi could have ever manifest while mitigating the infighting and betrayal. Dooku believed that it was the Sith that would be the prime and ultimate Force-wielding order, without the interference of the Senate and those too naive, while also again mitigating the infighting and emotions of the Sith. Dooku believed he was going to create the perfect order of Force wielders under the Sith guise, although in his mind they were to be something more. And although Dooku would never be the leader, only second to Palpatine and perhaps General Skywalker, he was comfortable with his role. This would allow the once famed war general and Republic hero to slowly paint the Jedi as a problem that was causing more harm than good at the dawn of the new Imperial era. It was Dooku's plan to turn the Jedi Knights around the larger Jedi Council and Order, and turn them against one another, not to outright slaughter them all, which was a part of the plan that Dooku was not ever privy to. Dooku would then go on to puppeteer the corruption of Anakin Skywalker, and they would use the great hero as a figurehead for their cause, garnering positive public perception and trust by using the voice of the Chosen One to further their own agenda. This new Imperial armada of Force-sensitive dark side assassins would allow him to create what he called an Empire of Man, eliminating all non-human leadership from the Empire and purifying it as an empire controlled by humanity, highlighting his previously established prejudicial views on other species throughout the galaxy, though the seeds were planted to hint that Dooku did not entirely trust Sidious and likely anticipated that he might have to stage a coup at some point down the road. He took on numerous dark side apprentices against his master's wishes, and likely anticipated that his views and that of Sidious did not line up entirely, though his downfall was in believing that this conflict would arise after the rise of the Empire and not previous to it. Upon being deceived and watching the soon-to-be Emperor tell Anakin to execute him, did he finally understand the scope of the plan and the trap into which he had fallen. In his final moments, he understood the true nature of Sidious's plan, and in the original script, Dooku was supposed to beg for his life, but Sir Christopher Lee believed it to be unbecoming of the character, and eventually persuaded George Lucas to allow him to die with dignity, and the final product entailed Dooku's silent execution at the hand of the Chosen One. From there, the path of the Empire took on the canonical course that we know today, though some have claimed that this version of the Imperial Armada would have been far more compelling to watch unfold, just as Dooku had envisioned, a new supreme force-wielding order, an army of the dark side and dark side wielders being sent on clandestine executions as the Iron Fist of the Empire could have been fascinating to see unfold, though the remains of this idea are likely a heavy contributing factor to the inception of the Inquisitors. However, Dooku believed that his followers would be fully fledged Sith Lords, and not just simple Jedi hunters. Dooku wanted to establish a brand new order, not the Inquisitors simply being an extended will of the Sith that ruled over them. Dooku imagined a Sith Empire, not just an empire. Vader's Inquisitorius seemed to share striking similarities to Dooku's original vision, as a legion of Sith warriors commanded by Darth Vader, and sent to carry out the wishes of the Empire, an empire that sadly didn't have room for Dooku. But anyway, my friends, what do you think of this version of the Empire that Dooku had planned on forming? And do you think this would have been a more compelling vision that we'd never ultimately receive? What are your thoughts on what if Dooku had actually survived Revenge of the Sith with this being his main plan? Do you think it ultimately would have worked out, or do you think that Dooku was always destined to be betrayed and replaced by Anakin Skywalker? Also, how do you feel a dark side Anakin and Dooku would work together as leaders of the Empire? Do you think that it would work, or would they eventually come to blows? As always, my friends, thank you guys so much for watching the channel. May the Force be with you, and have a great day.